Ready for part 5 of Bashed by the Bankers. CNN is fake news, by the way. Let me go back to where I was. So, a debt-free money would solve the problem and prevent collapse. The collapse of today's civilization does not have to happen. A return to a debt-free money system would avoid that. This could be accomplished in one of two ways. We could return to using a gold and silver coin issued into circulation without being loaned, or by simply having the United States Treasury issue paper money and spend it into circulation. The spending of the paper would be limited to the building of roads, which would be of equal benefit for all, since roads can only be built by labor. In reality, all that would be done would be to monetize labor. That's really all it is. As the money was spent, it would flow into circulation, and we would all have debt-free money with which to meet our needs for a medium of exchange based on labor performed and production produced. You see, the unpaid interest caused by our present debt money system increases taxes. This ever-increasing interest in taxes is the real cause of inflation. And let me tell you guys, inflation is the hidden tax within our system. The dollar's devalued, and this isn't in the book, it's devalued about 98%, most experts say. Their dollar since 1913, since the Federal Reserve was created, has devalued 98% because of this system. Assaulted again, this time by the courts. The state moved ahead with its prosecution of me when a preliminary hearing was held on April 7th. The state changed its charges from assaulting an officer to obstructing law enforcement and resisting to service of process. The preliminary hearing was held in 8th Circuit District Court above Judge Scott C. Moses. It lasted most of the day. Yeah, man. The state brought in and talked about everything except what actually happened on March 19th, the day I was physically assaulted. When they finally talked about what happened that day, one of the scene troopers, Patrick Murphy of Pierre, South Dakota, he testified he had struck me in the head with a full 32-ounce ketchup bottle. That attack was a complete surprise to me. The officers testified that I had never threatened force or violence against either of them. They testified that I had not used any physical force of any kind until after I had been struck on the head with the ketchup bottle, okay? In fact, they testified that I had not stopped them from doing anything while they were on my place, my property. Yet, Judge Scott Moses of Deadwood, South Dakota, ruled that there was reasonable cause to believe that a crime had been committed. And that there was cause to believe I had committed it. With that, I was bound over for a jury trial circuit court. So judge had clearly made up his mind beforehand. You know, I mean, this is obvious. During the preliminary hearing, we noticed the inattentive manner of Judge Scott Moses. In fact, at one point, my attorney, Scott Hyde Prime, it's spelled Scott Heideprime, had to literally wake him up and advise him it was his turn to speak and ask permission to do so. This attitude made it abundantly clear that it didn't matter what the evidence was. The state was out to do it. To me. And this hearing was merely a formality. Before the final arguments were even concluded, Judge Moses pounded down his gavel and read his prepared statement. I could see the judge had already decided the case, so I had my lawyer move to have a change of judges. Surprisingly, the judge did not appoint someone else to handle the trial. He appointed a law-trained magistrate, Walter Mueller. Interesting name. This meant the trial had been remanded down to magistrate court because in South Dakota, a law-trained magistrate cannot hear a case in circuit court. Alright, so South Dakota Codified Law 166 16-6-12 states, the Circuit Court has exclusive original jurisdiction to try and determine all cases of felony and original jurisdiction concurrent with courts of limited jurisdiction as provided by law to try to determine all cases of misdemeanor and actions of proceedings for violation of any ordinance by law or police regulation of political subdivisions. SDCL 23A states, either the defendant of the prosecuting attorney may at any time prior to the commencement of the preliminary hearing in magistrate court making motion that the proceedings be transferred to the circuit court. Upon such motion, the magistrate shall transmit a certified statement of all proceedings and papers connected with this action to the circuit court as if it had been commenced therein. A preliminary hearing is commenced at the time the first witness is sworn. My case was commenced into circuit court and then moved down to magistrate court, which is clearly in violation of the state law. The magistrate court did not have any jurisdiction to try my case. However, our current court system is a virtual dictatorship where the judges believe that they are gods and don't let a little thing like laws get in their way. So, exactly. It's all rigged, guys, if you didn't know already. The trial went pretty much the same as the preliminary hearing. Trooper Pat Murphy testified I had gotten off duty at about 1 o'clock a.m. and he had gone home, gone to bed. I got a phone call about 1:30 a.m. from Stat Radio, which informed, it's S-T-A-T, it's not State Radio, Stat Radio, which informed me that I was to get up, get dressed, and go to the State Radio headquarters and report to Sergeant Dennis Jensen from Sioux Falls. When I reached the State Radio headquarters, I met with Sergeant Jensen, the trooper Jeff Talbot from Pierre. We were advised we were to meet Major Zwemke, Z-W-E-M-M-K-E, Zwemke, at district headquarters in Pierre. We were to take part in the foreclosure of the Byron Dale Ranch. After arriving at Timberlake, we reported to the PCA building. Once in the office, I was asked to come into a room with Captain Hammond and Major Zwemke. I think it's Zwemke or Zwemke. Zwemke asked me if it would be possible for me to take Byron Dale out. I asked what he meant by out, and he replied, "With your background in martial arts, could you take out Byron Dale?" When he asked what his background in martial arts was, he testified, "I am a black belt in judo. I am also karate instructor. I teach defensive tactics for state of South Dakota. I am an instructor in nightsticks and teach officer survival." So he's Mr. Nightstick guy. They told Mr. Nightstick guy to go take him out, guys. I mean, they wanted to kill him, guys. That's what they do. Trooper Murphy further testified that he had sat in the house about 20 minutes considering which was the best way to take out Byron Dale. One option he considered was taking hold of my Mini 14, jumping up and striking me with it. But I decided not to use that option. The second option was toyed with jumping and hitting me with his fist, but he decided against that too. It was too risky. Byron was always gesturing with his hands, and I was afraid that he would be blocking it unknowingly. I finally decided to jump up and get him with a roundhouse kick across the table, catching Byron along the side of the head. But before I could do that, I had to move the radio I was setting on the table. It was when I got up, sat to move next to the radio, I noticed a ketchup bottle. That's when I decided to hit him in the head with it. Just then, Officer Jerry Baum, Director of Highway Patrol, distracted my attention, and when I looked his way, wham! I got it over the head with a 32-ounce bottle, a full bottle of ketchup. Glass, guys. I mean, geez. That's not fun. I mean, it's not a plastic bottle, guys. when Trooper Murphy, it should have said that in here, I think. I think it should have said glass, because it needs to make that clear. When Trooper Murphy was asked the question, is it fair to say, Mr. Murphy, in legal parlance, you were the aggressor in this fight? He answered, yes. Also, at the trial, Jerry Baum was asked, is it fair to say that Mr. Dale's being struck in the face was a complete surprise to him? Baum answered, yes, sir. Then he was asked, he said nothing to provoke that, had he? He hadn't taken a swing at Mr. Murphy. Baum answered, no, sir. The next question was, is it fair to say Mr. Murphy was the aggressor? And Baum answered, yes. At the close of the trial, the jury went into the jury room. 3 hours later, they sent a note out to the judge and asked him exactly what it was they were supposed to do to find Mr. Dale guilty. The judge replied that they had to follow the instruction. Other than that, he couldn't make any comment. Oh, what do you know? The jury was out for 6.5 hours. And when they all came back, they pronounced me guilty. As far as the roll call vote had been taken, 2 of the women on the jury and the court reporter left the courtroom in tears. A couple of months later, I was visiting with one of the jury members who had left the courtroom in tears. I asked her just what had happened to make them think I was guilty of anything. She replied, Byron, we didn't think that you were guilty of anything. In fact, when we first went into the jury room, the first vote was 10-2 that you were not guilty. But there were 2 people who wanted you found guilty. They had their minds made up before the trial, especially the one who worked for the state. He kept telling us it didn't make any difference what we thought. The law says he is guilty. And he kept telling us, I know you may not understand the law, but I do. And the law says that he is guilty and you must find him guilty regardless of what you think. And so, of course, that was a bare-faced lie, bald-faced lie. The law does not say whether any person is guilty or not guilty. In a jury trial, only the jury can say or decide whether anyone is guilty or not. Otherwise, there would be no reason to have a jury trial. The reason for a jury trial is to provide a check on the power of the government and see that justice is upheld. Unfortunately, most Americans no longer really understand the real reason for a jury trial. A jury is to protect the innocent and uphold the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, as well as to punish the guilty. I mean, I got these citizens' rule books, guys. You guys got to look at these. And it's also a jury handbook. And you can find them at this banned website right here. Oh, you see that right there? Go there and get those. As bad as things were, the government did to us, they were no worse than what was done by the 10 people on that jury. When they found a man that they knew was not guilty because they got tired of arguing with the state worker that they wanted to go home, it is nothing less than a crime when people on a jury vote to find a person guilty when they know in their hearts and minds that the person is not guilty. My case is just another example of what a government agent planted on a jury can do. After the trial, there was a pre-sentence investigation. When all the testimony and character references, interviews, etc. were in, the court service officers were strongly recommended a suspended sentence. Sorry. Instead of following the finding of the pre-sentence investigation, the judge sentenced me to the maximum 1 year and 1 month in prison and a $750 fine. There's another little interesting occurrence surrounding this case. This was the last case for Mr. Judge Miller. He retired. In fact, he retired very comfortably. He was boasting about it at the sentencing while we were all waiting in the chambers how he had just gotten a new car. That everything... that just makes me so mad. I'm sorry, guys. That just makes me so mad. My family and I worked our butts off for 20 years and were stripped of everything we had worked for just because we had challenged the right of the banking system to create so-called money out of thin air and force us all to use it. We were denied even 1 penny from our ranch to put food on our table or heat our home. On the other hand, the judge who sentenced me to prison retired in luxury after being an alcoholic most of his adult life. I'm going to end it there. Just a 15-minute one today. Rocco Bianco channel. I'll get the next one out tomorrow.